Hello everyone and welcome back. For this week's track guide in the IR04, this week we revisit Silverstone for what should be another great week of racing. I think last season the racing here was really fun. There are a lot of places to go side by side. There are a lot of overtaking opportunities. There's decent draft so you can get nice close racing, and as long as you're racing around people who are willing to be respectful and leave you space, you can get a lot of good racing here. That said, let's go ahead and take a look at the lap before we dive into the details corner by corner. And one quick disclaimer is that this lap is recycled from the track guide last season, but I have updated some of the editing so that it looks kind of the new style. Anyway, let's go ahead and see the lap before we check things out corner by corner. Before we dive in, I do just want to say if you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so now. It's helpful for me as I grow the channel, and you'll get notifications as I come out with new guides, so it's great for everyone. There's also a bunch of great stuff down in the description, including a link to this lap on Garage 61 if you want to compare your telemetry to mine, a link to my Twitch channel, my Discord if you're looking for like coaching or anything like that, maybe hit me up, or even if you just want to hang out offline. And then, yeah, some other stuff like a discount code to Maradness.com, some other good things. So yeah, check out the description. It's a good place to check out. Anyway, let's have a look at the track conditions and then let's analyze the lap so you can know what to do when you lap Silverstone. Before we get started, let's take a look at our track conditions. We're on a 23 degrees Celsius track with 23 degree air temperature, and we have moderately low usage at 41%. Just keep in mind that if you want to compare your lap time versus my lap time, these are the conditions that you want to have in your session if you want a one-to-one comparison. A good rule of thumb is that if the track is hotter or the air is hotter, you're probably going to have a little bit slower lap times. And if the air is a little bit cooler and the track is a little bit cooler, generally you're going to have faster lap times. With that said, these conditions are generated from the race session. So the conditions that we're getting here should be realistic conditions that you can get in a race session this week. I'll also note that the track does have a rules tab this week. So again, I think it's probably important to go ahead and look at this to know where your track bounds are. I found it especially difficult to avoid 1Xs when doing these laps. So I will say that it's probably good to familiarize yourself with this. In my opinion, the off-track rules are a little inconsistent around Silverstone. So yeah, you really just want to keep that in mind as you're lapping around the track. But yeah, have a look at this, familiarize yourself so you can avoid those 1Xs, particularly in qualifying. As for our laps, you can see that I did more than usual this week. Normally, I do a tank and I'm good. I'll find the lap. This week, that was not the case. I'd say we did 28 laps. I'd say at least 23, 24 of them had a 1X or a mistake. So as soon as I got this lap on lap 28, that was clean and close to the racing line that I was aiming for. No off tracks or anything like that. I said, you know what, we just gotta take that where we can get it. I was done. But yeah, so we're gonna look at this 201.174 as our guide lap. But yeah, let's go ahead and break this down corner by corner. Turn 1, also known as Abbey, can be taken flat out, but there is some nuance here because we need to use all of the available curbing on exit. Turning in a little too late or not getting enough early rotation can cause us to easily run wide. I should also note that depending on the conditions, you may find that you need to lift just a little bit on the first few laps. Another thing to consider is that the exit of turn 1 blends directly into the entry of turn 2, so we need to be prepared for that direction change as well. In general, throughout the lap, with these conditions and on the fixed setup, I found that I was getting a little bit less mid-corner rotation than I was expecting through the higher speed corners like turn 1. To help combat this, we need to make sure we get good rotation earlier on in the corner to avoid any sort of lift or correction as we head through the corner. This also means that throughout the lap, we really need to make sure we're hitting our apexes, and to do that, I found I needed to turn in a little bit earlier than I initially wanted to. For turn 1, we can start to turn in right in between the 100 board and the 50 board around the end of the grass on the left, and we want to use all of the apex curbing that we can get away with. As we go through the corner, we want to reduce tire scrub as much as we can, and we're aiming to use a large amount of the black and white curbing on exit. If we take any more exit curbing than we do on this lap, we'll generally have to fight the car a little bit more through turn 2 than is ideal. Turn 2, also known as farm curve, should be easily flat out. How far out we go on the exit of turn 1 will determine how much tire scrub we have through turn 2, but this should always be flat out regardless of what lap you're on in the race. We'll take a pretty narrow approach to the apex, and as we exit, our goal is to get the car back to the left side of the track as quickly as possible so we can prepare for the turn 3 braking zone. Village, or turn 3, is our first braking zone, and it's a bit of a tricky one. It can be very easy to lock a tire here and run too deep on exit, so we need to be gentle with the brakes. The exit of turn 3 also blends directly into the entry of turn 4, and we're flat out from turn 4 all the way down the Wellington straight, so we need to make sure that our exit out of turn 3 allows for a good entry into turn 4. We'll start by braking right around the 100 board, and we'll guide the car into the apex of the corner, careful to avoid the red curbing. As we come through the apex, we want to keep our hands turned, and we want to be patient getting back to throttle. If we open up our hands, or if we commit to throttle too quickly, we'll run too wide on exit, which will compromise our ability to set up for turn 4. For the same reasons, we're also looking to keep the car as stable as possible through this phase of the corner. Any correction is likely to result in a compromised turn 4 as well. On this lap, I was a little too eager to commit to throttle, so I did have to lift to allow the car to rotate a bit more before committing back to throttle. As we complete our exit, we'll continue the same arc we took through the corner as we work our way back to the right-hand side of the track to set up for turn 4. Turn 4, or the loop, leads on to another flat-out section, so we're looking to prioritize exit. Because of that, we want to open up the entry as much as we can, and we look to get back on throttle as early as we can without needing to lift after we do so. As we start to brake and turn in for the corner, our focus should be on keeping the car stable, and we're aiming to use all of the apex curbing while avoiding touching the raised red curbing. The direction change here is abrupt, and there is a slight dip in the road, so the rear of the car is really going to be active here and want to break loose, so we need to be extra careful to keep things in control. As we reach the apex curbing, we can get back on throttle as we aim to use all of the exit curbing while avoiding touching the dirt. If you do find yourself ending up in the dirt on exit here, try to be a little bit more patient through the middle of the corner to allow the car to rotate just a little bit more before you commit back to throttle. Aintree or turn 5 is this easily flat out kink in the road, so there really isn't much to note here other than aiming to use as much apex curbing as you can while avoiding the off track. Turn 6 is known as Brooklands and marks the end of the Wellington Straight. The corner is pretty spacious on entry, but it does tighten on exit, so our goal here is a later apex. The exit here also leads directly into the entry of the next corner, so we need to be conscious of not compromising our line through turn 7 with a sloppy exit out of turn 6. We can start to brake and turn in as we approach the 50 board, and we're looking to gently reduce the speed of the car as we approach our later apex. At the apex, we can use a ton of curb, and we're looking to get back on throttle for a quick burst of speed on exit. On exit, we can use all of the black and white curbing, but that does make the entry to the next corner a little bit more tricky. So I found that using a little bit less exit curbing and being a little bit more patient through Brooklands to be the best option for me. Turn 7 is known as Luffield, and it leads on to another flat out section of track, so we're once again looking to prioritize exit. We want to open up the entry as much as we can before we commit to turn in. I did find that there are actually a couple of lines that do work here. The one that I settled on is the one you see here, where we get into the corner a little bit earlier and have something of a double apex. That said, on this lap, we do slightly miss the second apex, but it doesn't hurt us so much. Another approach here is to run a little bit deeper on corner entry and cut back hard for a later apex. I found that to be a little bit less consistent for me, and in general, both approaches gave me a similar lap time through this section when I did hit them properly. The main thing with the line I've chosen here is that you need to be patient when getting back on throttle. Being too eager to get to power will cause you to run wide on exit, so we need to make sure that we wait until we know we can exit safely. On exit, we're looking to use all of the available curbing as we head down towards Woodcote. Turn 8 or Woodcote is easily flat out, but the trick here is to cut in as close to the wall as you can to reduce the distance traveled because there is no off track here. Turn 9 is called Copse, and it's one of the other high-speed corners where I struggled with mid-corner rotation. Our goal here is to maintain as much speed as we can through the corner while avoiding running wide on exit. We can use a lot of the curb on exit, but going beyond the white and black curbing with all four wheels will result in an off track. Because we're struggling for mid-corner rotation, turning in a little bit earlier than expected is the key to hitting the apex and avoiding running wide on exit. We can start slightly braking and turning in right around the 75-meter mark or when we get to the end of the concrete wall on the inside. We're looking to use all of the black and white apex curbing, and on this particular lap, we leave a lot on the table and do come very close to running wide on exit as a result. The more consistent you are with hitting the apex here, the more consistent you'll be with avoiding running wide on exit, so nailing the apex is priority number one. On exit, we want to use all of the curbing that's available to us to maintain as much speed as we can and avoiding tire scrub as we head down towards Maggotts. This next set of corners are all connected to one another, and they're commonly referred to as Maggotts and Becketts. Because they're all connected, the fastest way through an individual corner may not necessarily mean being the fastest way to get through the section as a whole. Turn 10 is easily flat out and exits directly into turn 11, so our line here affects the next corner. Because of that, we want to choose a slightly later apex, which will allow us to open up turn 11 a bit more. Turn 11 is also called Maggotts, and it's another corner that could easily be taken flat out, but doing so would compromise our entry to the next corner, so instead we opt for a little bit of a lift to rotate the car a little bit more towards the right. As we come to the end of the red curbing at turn 10, we can start to turn in for turn 11 and lift off throttle briefly to help rotate the car. As soon as we get that little bit of extra rotation and right when we start to get to the apex, we can get right back to full throttle, and we're aiming to use a large amount of the apex curbing. As we head through the exit of Maggotts, we want to continue our arc and continue turning right to open up turn 12 just a little bit more. As we reach about the middle of the road while we're exiting Maggotts, we can start to turn back to the left for turn 12. We need just a little touch of the brakes to get the car turning in, and our goal here is to apex later and have the car pointed as far to the left as we can to open up for turn 13, which is known as Becketts. Becketts leads us into another long, flat-out section of track down the hangar straight, so the exit here is very important, which is why we've sacrificed our overall speed through turn 12 to open up Becketts. If we did a good job of opening up the entry, we can commit back towards the apex here with an aggressive turn in and a real quick tap of the brakes. We're looking to use all of the apex curbing and aggressively get back on throttle once we get there. On exit, there is a decent amount of runoff, but the off track is also a little bit more aggressive here, so we have to be careful not to use too much of it. If you find that you are running wide on exit, often try delaying your throttle input just a little bit to allow the car to rotate more. Turn 14 is called Chapel, and it's easily flat out. As we come out of the exit of Becketts, the only real note here is being careful of that off track that you can get from using too much curb. Turn 15 is called Stowe, and it's another quick corner that tightens slightly on exit, so we're looking for a fairly late apex. Similar to what we did for Brooklands earlier on in the lap, we want to carefully slow the car as we guide it into this later apex. In general, you should feel a little bit slower than you'd expect during the early part of the corner, or it's very easy to overdo it. We can start braking right around the beginning of the entry curbing and begin our gradual turn in there. Keeping the car balanced and smooth here as we guide it towards the apex is very, very important. Any small snaps or corrections will easily push us wide on exit. Once we reach the apex, we can aggressively get back to throttle, but we want to be careful not to do so too quickly, or we can once again easily run wide. Right around the beginning of the orange anti-cut curbs is about what we're aiming for. On the exit, we have a lot of extra space to use, and we do want to use all of it, but there is an off track if you go just a little bit beyond what we do here, and a little beyond that, there is a slowdown, so you have to be careful. Our final braking zone is for the Vale chicane, and the exit here is our priority as we head back onto the main straight. We can start to brake right around the 100 board, and our goal should be to take the first apex fairly tightly to open up our approach for the second apex. Doing this will allow us to commit back to throttle at the first apex and not have to lift for the rest of the lap, which will give us the best acceleration and top speed as we come to the line. To do so, we do brake pretty hard to avoid running deep at the first apex, but this does allow us to apex just a little bit later and also commit back to throttle earlier. Through the second apex, we want to use all of the curbing while being careful to avoid the raised red curbing, and on exit we'll look to do the same thing as we run all the way out to the far edge of the track, being careful not to upset the car on the red curb. Turn 18 is known as Club, and if we've executed our plan well for the Vale chicane, there really isn't much to note here. It should be easily flat out as we use to maximize the entry and exit curbing to bring the car across the line and finish our lap here at Silverstone. And before we go, I just want to give a big shout out once again to anyone who's liked, subscribed, commented, hung out with me on Twitch, joined my Discord, all those kind of things. All this feedback is just letting me know that these are super useful for you guys, and so I will continue to make them as long as they are useful for the community. That said, yeah, good luck with your races out there. I hope you enjoy the week at Silverstone, and until I see you next time, please take care of yourselves.